Okay. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to this evening's public hearing in the proceedings of the Grand Rapids Public Schools. Today is Monday, June 29th. We will have a brief
Hey,
presentation
Sarah.
on the final proposal from our administration for the 2020-2021 budget proposal. After that, there will be time for public comment, and we will leave most of the time for this evening's public hearing to be open for public comment. For those who would like to find more detailed information on this proposal, you can go to grps.org, click Board of Education, and find the information under board meeting minutes. And at this time, I would like to turn it over to Dr. Gorman.
Madam President, members of the Board of Education, I would like to ask Larry Oberst, our CFO, to come forward and give a presentation on this year's proposed budget and proposed property tax millage rate. Mr. Oberst.
Thank you, Dr. Gorman, and good evening, Madam President and board members. Incoming Superintendent Dr. Roby, and welcome all in the public who have tuned in this evening. As Dr. Gorman mentioned, I'll give a brief overview of the 2021 general fund budget proposal, which will be acted on by the board immediately following this meeting, this public hearing at 6:30. So let me pull up here just a brief PowerPoint. Other things in it, so that I just briefly, some of the revenue assumptions that were built into the 2021 budget proposal. And I'm sure many of you are aware of the significant shortfall projected in state revenue. So the 2021 foundation allowance, we are assuming an additional cut of $300 per pupil. This is on top of a $350 cut that we are proposing for the current year, the 19-20 year, via Amendment 2, which will also be acted on by the board at the board meeting that follow this meeting. So if both of those, the 350 to 300 total 650, that would take our foundation allowance down to 7,461. It's currently at 8,111. And this cut of 650 down to 6,461 is comparable to the foundation allowance funding we had way back in the 2015-16 school year. So a significant cut. In fact, the largest per pupil cut since Proposal A came into being back 25 years ago. The state at risk, that's our $31A dollars, and readiness, third grade reading readiness funding will approximate $15.3 million. That's roughly consistent with what we're receiving in the current year. And then the enhancement millage, which was voted by all the county districts a few years ago. I think we're in our third or fourth year of that. That's a local property tax of 0.9 mils. It's assessed on all property within Kent County and then distributed to all Kent County local school districts based on proportionate enrollment. Of course, Grand Rapids has the largest enrollment. We get the largest portion of that. In this 2021 budget proposal, we are assuming an additional $100,000 in enhancement millage over what we're currently getting, and that will total $3.7 million. Currently this year, about $3.6 million, projected next year, $3.7 million. And because that's based on local countywide property tax, we aren't seeing the same cuts as we are in the foundation allowance. The assessed value of property in Grand Rapids, in Kent County actually, continues to increase, and that is positive for or revenue that's generated from property tax, which the enhancement millage is. So that's good news on the revenue front. The major expense assumptions, again, this is object of a lot of discussion initially at a board work session a couple weeks ago. And many of you are aware of the town hall we had a week ago, on the 22nd. Perhaps some of you were a part of that, tuned into that. A little more detail at the board meeting about the changes in that. But overall, highlights, we are freezing employee wages and benefits. Part of that benefit freeze is the hard cap for health insurance. That is a state maximum allowed for employers to contribute to the employee's health insurance premium. That hard cap, we term it the hard cap, that hard cap is adjusted every year by Treasury based on a healthcare cost of living increase, if you will. And that takes effect, or has taken effect for our district every January 1st. So the hard cap increase was 3.3%. That would have taken effect beginning January 1st of 2021. However, because of the revenue cuts, we are proposing that both wages and benefits be frozen at the 2019-20 levels. And then we had to make reduction expenses, major reductions totaling about $10.6 million. And that came from not filling a number of current vacancies that had been budgeted to be filled. We've just really essentially eliminated some of those vacancies. There will be potentially some employee layoffs depending on other vacancies that might be able to be filled. We made a number of reductions in non-salary expense areas, transportation, advertising, supplies, things like that. However, the expense reductions does not include any building closures. We had initially proposed potentially closing 3 buildings, as well as eliminating the Montessori pre-K 3 and 4 programs. Both of those, the building closures and Montessori program reductions, we've taken off the table and got those reductions in other areas. Really the areas I mentioned in terms of vacancies and some layoffs and other reductions. Total reduction from the current year is over 100 FTE reductions. About 20 to 30% of those are vacancies, so they don't currently have a individual residing in that, although that position was initially in the budget. As I just mentioned, we'll take many of those vacancies off the table to get to the 10.6 million in cuts that we'll need for 2021. So let me just show you here then. This is part of the budget packet. This is what the revenue side looks like for the proposed 2021 budget. You can see the first column is the final final revenue amounts for the 2018-19 year. The middle column, appropriation as amended, that would be for the current year based on Amendment 2, which again is going to the board. Their board meeting, it follows this meeting for their approval. So that's approved, and these are the revenue amounts. And included, if you look about a couple lines down, you'll see a category called state sources. And you'll see a line called unrestricted, and that number totals, talk in the middle column here, that totals $82,847,000. That's where the $350 per pupil reduction has been taken out of for the current year. And then the third column, the far right, is the proposed budget. And again, look at that same unrestricted state source line. You can see a number there, $78,142,000. That's where the additional $300 per student in foundation allowance reductions has taken place. So if you look at then the rest of the Enhancement millage is up in the local source line. Proposed budget, 62,304,000. That includes enhancement millage, the local property taxes that go to the foundation allowance amount. So we are looking at total revenue and financing sources proposed in 2021 of $212,596,828. It's about $5 million. You can see there about $4.5 million less than 1920, and that's that reduction in the foundation allowance. We will start the 2021 year with a fund balance of $6,115,000. And so we have available to appropriate in 2021 of $218.7 million. Then if we look at how we're going to spend that money, again, the columns are the same. The first column is the final from last year. The middle column is after Amendment 2 for the current year. And then, of course, the far right column, proposed budget for 2021. $112 million, $112.7 million almost in instruction, support services of $99 million, community service area, facilities acquisition and building improvements for $1.4 million. Total expenditures of $217.6 million proposed. Some minor transfers out. So total appropriations, $217.7 million approximately. And the impact then on our fund balance, and this is important. We are, first of all, required by law to always have a positive accumulated fund balance. There is a board policy for a district that shoots for a general fund balance goal, if you will, of 10% with a plus or minus 5%. And if you look in the middle column, the anticipated June 30th, 2020, because we had to take that part of that 650 reduction in revenue for the current year, the 2020 year, the 1920 year, we are using some fund balance. And so at the end of really tomorrow, we expect our fund balance to be at 6.1 million. We started the year, the first column there, you can see almost 12.3 million. 8.5%. We think we're going to end this year, tomorrow, at 6.1 million, 4.2%. And then based on another $300 per student cut that's assumed in the 2021 budget, proposed budget, we will take that fund balance to dangerously low, just over $1 million, 0.74%. There is state regulation came out several years ago called early warning. It's monitored by Treasury. That particular legislation also requires a 5% minimum fund balance, amongst other things. And absent that, the Treasurer has the ability to come in and ask for some additional reporting initially, and then further on down the line, they can require some additional changes to get the fund balance up. It's clearly the administration and leadership, as well as the board, need and want to get that fund balance back up. But we were hit with an unanticipated revenue reduction with this pandemic. And it looks like the last projections from the state back in middle of May at the revenue estimating conference that the reduced revenues, the impact on the economy will continue at least into the 21-22 year, and probably hang on to a certain extent, although hopefully not as bad in the 22-23. I just want to reiterate that the $10.6 million in cuts that we're proposing for the 2021 budget, they don't get put back in place the next year. Revenues are still going to be challenging for us. Likely we may have to find some additional areas to make some reductions for the 21-22 budget. And that's based on what we know now. So again, this whole proposed budget for the 2021 year is based on all the facts and circumstances that we know today. We also know that there is a lot of things out there that we don't have clear resolution on. So it's likely that this budget will change. It's probably a certainty it'll change. Just how much remains to be seen. But we have the ability at any point in time to bring amendments back to the board when things change significantly. Historically, we've usually done about 2 amendments to the general fund budget, one after the first 6 months, after the fall count comes in, and then one, as we're doing tonight, near the end of the fiscal year to true up our operations, to the budget of the operations. So I'm going to suggest tonight that we'll probably have more than 2 budget amendments next year, the 2021 year. So that is the extent of my prepared comments this budget hearing.
Ms. Grant, may we ask Craig or Julie if there are any public comments?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Oberst.
Craig, are there any public comments?
I understand from Julie that there are no public comments for this session.
Okay, with that in mind, we will take a brief break until our 6:30 meeting, if that's correct. Am I missing anything else? Okay, so this meeting is adjourned. We will be back at this same link at 6:30 p.m. to host our regular scheduled meeting. So I do ask that everyone that is here as a panelist, please mute and mute your line and turn off your video, and we will be back at 6:30. Thank you. I will wait a few more moments to allow attendees to get here and for Dr. Baker.
I'm here. Sorry, I just had my video off.
Okay, wonderful. Well, we will call this meeting to order. Good evening and welcome to the special board meeting for Grand Rapids Public Schools. Today is Monday, June 29th. And Ms. Lewis, can you please take the roll?
Mrs. Williams,
Present.
Dr. Baker,
Here.
Ms. Davis,
Here.
Dr. Flores,
Present.
Ms. Lewis here, Reverend Matthias,
Present.
Mr. Ross,
Present.
President Grant,
Present.
we have a quorum.
And Ms. Shockey, I'm here.
Where did I miss you? How did I miss you? I'm gonna put you down here. I thought I had.
Wonderful. Okay, well, the first action item that we have this evening is our purchasing agenda. Are there any comments or questions on this agenda on the, yes, on the purchasing agenda? If not, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Support.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. You know what? Once we have that completed, I also need to take a step back. I do not believe we approved the agenda.
I move to approve the agenda.
Thank you.
Support.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Thank you. And Ms. Lewis, let's take the roll for the purchasing agenda.
For the purchasing agenda. Yes, okay.
Yes.
Mrs. Williams,
Yes.
Dr. Baker,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Dr. Flores,
Yes.
Ms. Lewis, yes. Reverend Matthias,
Yes.
Ms. Shotke,
Yes.
President Grant.
Yes. Okay, the next action item that we have is a change to policy 3150, which is our budget fund policy. And I believe, Dr. Gorman, that we will have Ms. Pitts give an explanation of the change to this policy.
Absolutely. President Grant, members of the board, I'd like to ask Sharon Pitts to come forward.
Board members, can you hear me?
Slightly.
I always have to ask that on a Zoom meeting. Good evening, President Grant, board members, Dr. Gorman and Dr. Roby. So today we are proposing a change, we're asking the board to actually take today to modify policy 3150, budget fund balance. And you can see in red what we highlighted. This came before the ad hoc policy committee, who recommended that this change come forward. And this would allow us to have a temporary change to the policy to allow the fund balance to go below 5% in an emergency type situation, which we have right now. It is not intended to be used on a permanent basis, but only in an emergency basis. So that's the change.
Thank you. Is there any question or discussion around this change?
Yeah, it's obvious that we need to do this, and it is not just a local emergency, but we'll have to be mindful that, emergency means something this big, not just because we're short on a particular given year, but that's for future boards to decide what an emergency is. But I would say that we all agree we're in an emergency this year.
This is Kim Williams. Just a quick question. I just wanted to clarify that was just for the upcoming policy year.
This policy states that it can be made only during emergency situations beyond the control of the board. So it doesn't have a particular time basis, but I think the committee wanted to make it very narrow by putting that language beyond the control of the board in there, and something like this COVID, which clearly was beyond anybody's control.
I was kind of along with Kim there. I was wondering if we could add language that does put some sort of time frame, at least something that maybe says in such instances there will be a review prior to the next approved budget or something to that effect, just so we don't unintentionally allow us to stay in more of a perpetual state of being below that 5%. I don't think that would be likely, but just wonder if it makes sense to put something like that in there.
And when we did discuss this at policy, the language does still say that it should be 10% of the projected annual general fund with a variance of 5%. And that's why we decided that the wording of a temporary change to this policy can be made during an emergency situation. So I think by saying during the emergency situation, we are saying that if we are no longer in an emergency situation, we still want that 10% with a variance of 5%. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. It makes sense. I just was concerned particularly with regards to the ramifications of COVID lasting beyond this immediate time frame that we're in, how the policy supports that.
Yeah, this, as written, seems to allow us to define the length of the emergency as a board. And, it might be doubtful to think a year from now, everything is good again. But we would be determining that we're still in an emergency situation. So I like this. I think this language works just because any future board could always change whether or not they want to go under this 5%. They just have to vote on it, but they would be explaining to the public that we're changing it because of an emergency. And in this situation, I think that we're on good ground to declare an emergency. If 10 years from now another board wants to define it differently, that would be up for them and their public to decide whether or not that's an emergency.
So I think it's that matter of I was going to say, Tony, I think it is that matter of an explanation to the public is sort of what I'm looking for when I talk about a time frame. And again, I agree wholeheartedly. It's unlikely that we're limited to a neat 12-month time frame in this particular case. But I guess I was just thinking something in there that requires the board to at least publicly address this if it's going to continue to operate in that less than 5% area. It just seems like it would be appropriate to at least have some sort of stipulation where there's at least a public revisiting of this or conscious revisiting of this by the board at some designated time frame if emergency was enacted.
We just add language, emergency communicated to the public by the board.
It seems to me that the language says that it's at least annually. So we're saying that this fiscal year that's about to come, we're stating that we're giving that permission to function under this. And then obviously we would be updating, I would think, our public in subsequent meetings as we give updates and as we look at our situation. Again, I think it's because we want to give wise counsel to our district in regards to the financial situation that we find ourselves, remembering that we have made great gains as a district, and we want to continue to employ the public to support the schools, to attend school, to make sure that we're making the right financial choices that keep us both afloat, but also continue this forward motion that we've been experiencing. So,
Sharon, would that be the correct interpretation of that? The annual piece? That was how I
Yes.
understood it.
Every year, you all review your budget and you make budget determinations on a yearly basis. And so, yes, every year you would have to determine whether or not you have an emergency situation that would warrant going down to this zero budget. The zero fund balance. So,
Thank you. Does that are you asking for more than that? I want to make sure I understand. Are you asking for more than the annual review, Ms. Williams and Mr. Ross?
No, I think I'm okay with that. Thank you.
As well as I.
Okay, wonderful. Do we have
Make a
any
motion.
other?
Go ahead.
Oh, go
I was
ahead.
gonna make a motion, that's all, but go ahead.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to clarify if we had any other questions on this policy change. If not, I will give Mr. Ross the floor for the motion.
Just make a motion to approve edits to policy 3150 fund balance.
Support.
All right, Ms. Lewis, can we please take the roll?
I guess it helps if I'm unmuted here. Mrs. Williams,
Yes.
Dr. Baker,
Yes.
Ms. Davis,
Yes.
Dr. Flores,
Yes.
Ms. Lewis, yes. Reverend Matias,
yes.
Ms. Shockey,
Yes.
and President Grant. President Grant?
Yes, I'm sorry.
I vote yes also.
Mr. Ross.
I vote yes.
Did I skip you?
Unfortunately, you did.
Oh, I did, because I put Ms. Shockey there. I'll get it right next time, I promise, okay?
Okay, our next action item is the 2019-2020 adoption of Budget Amendment 2 for the General Operating Fund Resolution. And Dr. Gorman, I just want to make sure we may have some people tuning in that have not tuned in before when we vote on budgets. Can you do a quick breakdown for me, or maybe you will turn it over to Mr. Oberst about the different funds that we will be voting on and how it's broken down, just so that people have a clear understanding?
Absolutely. So of course, all of the agenda items moving forward, all the action items are connected to the budget or the business office. So I'm going to ask Mr. Oberst to come in at this time so he can help walk us through all of the action items. Mr. Oberst?
Thank you, Dr. Gorman. Good evening again, President Grant, board members, and incoming Superintendent Dr. Roby. Yes, as we talked back on our work session 2 weeks ago, as I mentioned in the budget hearing, we're bringing to you tonight Amendment 2, both to the general operating budget and also to the special revenue budget. So they have to be acted on individually. And we talked about it a couple of weeks ago, but just to refresh your memory, the general fund amendment, the material changes are in The revenue reduction, we've taken $350 per student reduction in revenue. That's reflected in there. We also included in the grant section of the general operating fund about $1.1 million of the ESSER funds. You may recall we anticipate getting about $5.5 million in ESSER funds. We will recognize $1.1 million in Amendment 2 in front of you, and then the other $4.5 million for the 2021 proposed budget, which I'll talk about in a little bit. So we also saw some cost decreases related to the fact that we closed school down in March. We had some savings in utilities. We had some savings in transportation. We had some savings in positions that we had anticipated to fill but did not need to fill for the remainder of the year. We also made some adjustments to the benefit factors. We got better information on that. So those are the major changes that affect the general operating fund. And the special revenue fund, major categories in there. Again, that used to be where the center-based programs or special ed resided. Now the two major funds there are food service fund, which is financed wholly with federal dollars. We just made some minor adjustments there, and our GRASP, our summer programs, we made some minor adjustments there. Again, the special revenue fund, unlike the general fund, does not have any specific fund balance requirements. They both have healthy fund balances. The general fund, just forgot to mention this. The Amendment 2 will use another 2.1 million of general fund balance. So for the year, for the 19-20 year, we are using about 6.1 million of fund balance, which will get us down to 4.21% at the end of the year, which is why we needed you to adjust the policy as you just did. So that's the summary. We need, again, separate motion for the general operating fund, separate motion for the special revenue fund to adopt these amendments.
Okay, thank you. First, we have the 2019-2020 adoption of Budget Amendment 2 for the General Operating Fund. Do I have any comment or questions from the board on this item? If not, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Support.
Ms. Lewis?
Mrs. Williams,
Yes.
Dr. Baker,
Yes.
Ms. Davis,
Yes.
Dr. Flores,
Yes.
Ms. Lewis, yes. Reverend Matias,
Yes.
Mr. Ross,
Yes.
Ms. Shockey,
Yes.
President Grant,
Yes.
motion carries.
Thank you. Next, we have the 2019-2020 adoption of Budget Amendment 2 Special Revenue Fund Resolution. Is there any discussion on this item? Do I have a motion to approve?
So move.
Thank you.
Support.
Support.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Lewis. Ms. Lewis, can you please take the vote?
Yes. Mrs. Williams,
Yes.
Dr. Baker,
Yes.
Ms. Davis,
Yes.
Dr. Flores,
Yes.
Ms. Lewis, yes. Reverend Matias,
Yes.
Mr. Ross,
Yes.
Ms. Shockey,
Yes.
President Grant,
Yes.
motion carries.
Thank you. Next, we have the 2020-2021 budget adoption for the General Operating Fund. Do I have discussion there? Do I have a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Support.
Before we vote, unless we're gonna have any discussion, could we have, I know that this was discussed during the public hearing, but just another high level list of where we're landing on this for the public's purpose?
Ms. Grant, we can absolutely do that. I'll have Mr. Larry Oberst come forward to provide a high-level presentation of this year's budget. Mr. Oberst?
Thank you.
Thanks again, Dr. Gorman. I'm going to share with you a PowerPoint, the press, if you will, that hopefully will give you an overview of what has transpired really the last couple of weeks.
I want it noted that I asked Larry for more comment. So, which is
So let me pull this up and here we go. Well, that didn't work, did it? I'm not sure what that is blank. Let me just make sure I have it. Oh, there it is. Ah, there we go. Everyone see that?
Yep.
Yep, good. And President Grant, it's certainly up to you in terms of process, but I'm certainly willing to entertain questions as I go through this. Or if you want to wait to the end, that's whatever is your preference.
Yes, I would prefer to wait till the end and also to leave it pretty high level, almost really comparable to what you were able to do in the previous 6 p.m. meeting.
Yeah.
But definitely we want board members to have discussion. We have had so much discussion, so I will be interested to see if there's additional discussion, but definitely open for that. Thank you.
The first couple of slides here, I'll go over very quickly. It's what you've seen before, just to remind you what had happened with the budgeting process. We started out in terms of increases and in revenue from the state, as well as increases in comp and benefits for our employees. As you're all well aware, the Revenue Consensus Estimating Conference back in May 15th projected a $1.1 billion deficit in the school aid fund for the current year, another almost $1 billion projected for the 2021 year. It equates to $650 per cut in foundation allowance if no additional revenue is found. We assumed 350 in Amendment 2, which you just approved. The other 300 is in the proposed 2021 budget in terms of reduction in revenue. And so after the work session on the 15th, the virtual town hall meeting on 6/22, the third bullet point on the slide I'm talking about now, the superintendent recommended that no schools, we had initially proposed 3 schools be closed, as well as essentially eliminating the pre-K programs, the Montessori. The superintendent, based on input from all aspects, recommended that we not close schools this year, or we not make changes to the Montessori program. So district leadership regrouped. We still had to hit the $10.6 million bogey, if you will. So the reductions we landed on, we reinstated it, as I just said, the cuts to the schools closures, the cuts to the Montessori program. And these are some of the major areas we looked at. We realigned the superintendent's cabinet, which will result in 3 fewer positions with a cost savings of 2 of those positions. In addition, there is an overall reduction in cabinet compensation, averaging about 5%. This also includes the superintendent. We made additional position reductions in professional learning, curriculum, community, student services, MIS, some fine arts support in our operation and facilities area and our supply area. We also made some proposed reductions in non-salary cost areas in communication, purchasing, public safety, transportation, those are the major categories. So where does this all leave us? You've seen this type of presentation before, it's been updated. As you can see at the top there, I've asterisked the areas where this last round of reductions were made, the ones I just spoke about. No change in the assessment area. As I mentioned, the Board of Education superintendent. Those are the three positions that cabinet's been reduced by. Also in that 375 is the total compensation reductions. Business office unchanged, communications, as I mentioned, some non-salary reductions there. The FTE reduction remains the same. We just pulled some dollars out of our marketing, public relations budget, if you will. Community and student services, unchanged. Curriculum, additional FTE we took out of there. School admin, unchanged, still 7 FTEs out of those. Early childhood, no change there. Half an FTE. Human resources, no changes there. 2 FTEs. Media services, again, no change from what you saw earlier, a 1 FTE reduction. MIS area took a couple out of 3 FTEs out of there. Operation facilities took an additional, I believe, 6 FTEs out of there for a total of 15. Other building changes, 1 FTE, and that really was 2.5 administrative support in 2 different buildings. Other staff reductions, this is the bogey when as I communicated earlier, if we decided as we did not to close the buildings and change the Montessori program, then you may recall those changes resulted in savings of almost 3.3 million. So we went through first and made the additional changes and reductions I just talked about. And that totaled about $1.5 million. So we still had 1.8 million that we had to reduce the budget by to get to that 10.6 overall savings. So the additional 18 to 22 staff FTEs are needed to get to that 1.8 million. Probably many of those would be teaching positions. However, as we've talked before, we have current vacancies in the teaching ranks. We always get additional retirements and resignations throughout the summer. So it may be such that we don't actually have to downsize individuals. We just don't fill some vacancies. It may result in some buildings, depending on how things look in the fall, with maybe some increased class size, but we'll see tomorrow when the governor releases her back to school plan, just what this might mean. But somewhere between 18 to 22 FTEs, depending on where they come from. Purchasing, some non-salary costs were intended to make some savings there. The FTEs are still 2. Student data services, no change there. Security, no additional FTEs. We are making some non-salary reductions there. I think about $20,000. Shared time, no change there. Special education, no changes there for what was presented to you earlier. Staff development, no changes there. Supply, 1 additional FTE reduction from what was presented to you earlier. Then transportation, you may recall that was $1 million. And we've increased that to $1.2 million in savings. As I think I discussed earlier, Dean, in our conversation with Dean Transportation, they came back with a number of options that could total as much as almost $3 million in savings. As we evaluated those options, we believe there was at least $1 million in savings, but if we sharpen our pencils and they sharpen theirs, we think we can get 1.2 million out of transportation savings without significantly, well, actually without impacting the safety of transporting our kids to or from the buildings. Let me just quickly, this is a summary of where things stand in terms of reductions. The initial the presentation to the public the town hall meeting last week showed on the central office line, 11 in administration, it's now 13, and 30 in the other area, it's now 40, for a total of 53. So an increase of 12 out of central office. School-based personnel, initially had 10 administrators, it's now 7. The 3 reduction of the 3 schools that we decided not to close. GREA staff, we had 29. That included, the reduction related to the Montessori program reduction and the school reductions. Those were added back in, but however, the 18 to 22 additional staff, I put 20 in the GREA area. That's where the 31 comes from. The other category, we had 22, it's down to 20. That total was 61, it's now 58. We go from 102 in our initial proposals to 111 in total FTEs. And then we continue with the freeze on compensation, hard cap, lesser funds, 4.5 million, property sales, 1.7 million, we left the same. Let me just, before I knock this a second and just bring up for you to summarize. This is a fund balance analysis. In the end, when we ran all those changes I just talked about, the last round of changes, it changed the fund balance by, I think, reduce it by $7,500 or so. So here is a fund balance summary. The very last column, well, the blue column to the right, you can see Amendment 2 that you just approved. I mentioned will get us down to about 4.2%. And then the proposed budget with the revised changes I just discussed with you would get us down to $1,035,000 or 7.74%. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions. You also have included in your packet, obviously, is the full budget packet we normally give to you. These last 2 slides are just a summary of the revenue and expense. You can see we're reducing fund balance, proposed fund balance by almost 5.1 million. And there's the numbers I just disclosed to you. The end of next year proposed at just over $1 million. So.
All right, is there anyone who has any further questions about this information? Okay. With that in mind, I will go back and reiterate that our next action item is the 2020-2021 budget adoption for the general operating fund resolution. Do I have a motion to approve?
So move.
Support.
Ms. Lewis?
Mrs. Williams,
Yes.
Dr. Baker,
Yes.
Ms. Davis,
Yes.
Dr. Flores,
Yes.
Ms. Lewis, yes. Reverend Matias,
Yes.
Mr. Ross,
Yes.
Ms. Shapke,
Yes.
President Grant,
Yes.
motion carries.
Thank you. Next, we have the 2020-2021 budget adoption for the Special Revenue Fund resolution. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Support.
Ms. Lewis?
Mrs. Williams,
Yes.
Dr. Baker,
Yes.
Dr. Baker,
Yes.
Ms. Davis,
Yes.
Dr. Flores,
Yes.
Ms. Lewis, yes. Reverend Matias,
Yes.
Mr. Ross,
Yes.
Ms. Shaki,
Yes.
President Grant,
Yes.
motion carries.
Thank you. I am getting a little bit of feedback, so I would just request if, once we vote, we can just mute ourselves again. Our last item is the 2020-2021 budget adoption for the debt service fund resolution. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Support.
Ms. Lewis?
Yeah, unmute here. Mrs. Williams,
Yes.
Dr. Baker,
Yes.
Ms. Davis,
Yes.
Dr. Flores,
Yes.
Ms. Lewis, yes. Reverend Matias,
Yes.
Mr. Ross,
Yes.
Ms. Shaki,
Yes.
President Grant. President Grant?
Yeah. Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We do not have any public comment for this evening. And so before we close and adjourn this evening, we will have comments. Let's start with Dr. Gorman for superintendent comments, please.
All right. President Grant, members of the board, I'd like to take this opportunity to acknowledge one of my colleagues, Mr. Ken Klomp-Ahrens, who is the Executive Director of Facilities and Operations. He is retiring. Tomorrow is his last official day. Ken does a tremendous amount for our school district, really helped us through the bond. Ken takes tremendous pride in his work, and I know he's sick of me when I'm driving home and I'm passing schools and I'm noticing something that may be a little out of place, and I call him up and it gets addressed really quickly. So Ken Klomp-Ahrens, enjoy retirement, sir. We appreciate your work and thank you for your service to the Grand Rapids Public Schools. That's all I have, Ms. Grant.
Thank you. And yes, absolutely. Congratulations on retirement, Mr. Klomp-Ahrens. Next, we will have board member comments, and I will just start with how I see it. So we will start with Ms. Lewis.
Thank you. Let's see, am I?
You muted yourself. You were already unmuted. Just push it one more time. We should. There you are. Right
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. As the only old white lady on the school board, I feel that I would be remiss if I did not mention the tragic happenings in our world in the last couple of months. Not just the COVID, which makes it even worse, but the abuse that so many of my Black friends have experienced. And I somehow, I don't know how, but I want people of color to know that I am trying very hard to be a supporter and let you know that I am sympathetic and that Black Lives Matter.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis. Next, we have Mr. Ross.
I guess just a quick comment on the budget piece. I think that's probably the most sobering, if not somber, vote that I've had to take in my 9 years or so on the board. It's never really exciting to consider any sort of cuts. I guess I just, from a public perspective, just appreciate people's engagement, praying for people's continued support during these troubling times, and hoping that everyone out there gives the 9 of us the benefit of the doubt and recognizing the seriousness in which we approach this work, and the again, less than enviable position that we're in this particular case. But again, looking at being optimistic and moving forward, and knowing that we're going to do all we can to move the district forward. And I guess that's a good segue into welcoming Dr. Roby. I guess in 2 days we have an official start for our new superintendent. Excited to have you on board. Excited to know that Dr. Gorman is still committed and is going to be with us. Again, I think that's a dynamic team. I want to thank Dr. Gorman for his service, not just this past year, but obviously over the probably about 20 years or so that he has been with the district. And again, lastly, shout out to Mr. Klomparens for his 3 decades of service. And so again, I guess that's really about it. But thank you everybody for your commitment and in doing this tough job, really. And thank you, Ms. Lewis, for your commentary.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. Next, we have Mrs. Shockey.
Thank you. Yeah, I too want to comment on what these last couple of weeks were like, as we really worked so hard as a board to use wise discernment and taking a vote like tonight's vote, and to make this kind of impact on our students and our schools and our staff. Evaluating these 3 proposals, and I want to reiterate that I know there was some confusion perhaps in the community that we had made a decision to close buildings and reduce Montessori. We hadn't done that yet. We had 3 proposals to evaluate over these last couple of weeks, and we're so grateful for all of the voices who came out. That's what we're tasked with as elected officials, is to listen and to use those comments in our decision making. There was no decision here that didn't affect our students and our staff. And so there was no decision between easy and hard, unfortunately. It was just a decision between hard and hard, which is a lot of what 2020 feels like. As I was thinking about this decision tonight, I just kept hearing this word restore. And I was thinking a lot about decision-making in crisis, and how so often, even in short hindsight, we look back and wish we would have done something a little different. And I didn't want to make a decision that I couldn't restore relatively easily. And so as I thought about buildings and programs, I knew that if we made the decision we made tonight, we could quickly restore if time passes and hindsight comes into our consciousness and we wanted to act in a different manner. Every parent that I spoke with, every stakeholder who reached out, almost every email that I got that I'm still trying to return, thank you for contacting me. Parents asked what they can do. And so I want to tell you or suggest a couple of things. First, be patient. We can't make these kinds of changes at central office without needing to have a little grace. And that's another thing that I've been saying in 2020 is it's the year of patience and flexibility. So be patient with us. We now need to let our new superintendent get her feet on the ground, get ingrained in our community, and really understand us so that we can all support her as she makes decisions for the betterment of our students moving forward. Second, continue to advocate to our state and federal legislators. We need more money. There's no question about it. And we need equitable funding. We've needed it long before COVID-19, and now we need it more than ever. So continue to have the voice that you had with us. It matters. Commit to Grand Rapids Public Schools. Commit today, K through 12. We need you as part of our community. We need you in your school, and we need you for all of our students. For those of us that sit on this board, we chose to advocate for every single one. And we're asking you to do the same thing. All of our children deserve an exceptional education, and we need you to stay committed to our district. And then lastly, if you are weathering this pandemic with financial stability, I encourage you to donate to our foundation, which is going to be another support for us moving into this next year. And so again, I just thank our community for being engaged in this process, for helping us make decisions, and please stay with us in these years to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Shockey. Next, we have Reverend Matthias.
Thank you. Just wanted to, similarly to what Ms. Shockey is saying, I think it's a call to all hands on deck. Some would think that cabinet is too fat, and you can't run a district without solid leadership. And so making these decisions is not easy. By the way, we are a team, both you and us. It's not us against them. It is us. And so we want to encourage folks, teachers, students, staff, partners, the public to be committed. This is our district, and we want to make our district great. From teachers showing up to students coming ready to learn, and for our staff to be sensitive to the multicultural needs and multidimensional needs of our students and parents. And so this is the time to not bail out, but really commit yourself. If you want to make Grand Rapids great, then you need to be here to make it great and not stand outside. And so I want to encourage us and challenge us to that effect. Thank you so much to our many partners, those who give to our district with in-kind gifts and work and volunteerism. That's part of why this district has seen the major changes that it has, is the overwhelming response that this community has had, and no doubt given this kind of crisis that we are in. So, and the other thing is, I do want to congratulate our new superintendent, Dr. Roby, and then Dr. Gorman, just for your candid discussions and bringing all these issues to the table and discussing it with us, and going back and discussing it with your team and saying how things can continue to be better. So I truly appreciate that effort for the many, as Jen said, the many people who have contacted us, and also for those who perhaps didn't have the means to contact us. Maybe they seem like silent voices. Trust me, we heard you through many avenues, and we appreciate that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Baker.
Yeah, first I want to thank Ms. Lewis for her very sincere thoughts earlier. And also, I think it's appropriate to one last time, considering Ken Clomperren's accomplishments in the district, to remind everyone that he was the first person to throw a touchdown pass on the Houseman Field. And, so this will probably be the last chance that any of us hear that. I'm sure he's expressed that story many times to his colleagues, but I just want to send him out with that note. It's been a tough week. I know it's been a really tough week for Superintendent Gorman, and welcome to Grand Rapids, Superintendent Roby. It's like, and as easy as this meeting seemed tonight, I know that it was weeks and months of really hard work to get us to this place. In the end, just a couple points. One is where we landed. Dr. Gorman said this at the beginning, that if we end up with the same proposal that we proposed a month ago and it doesn't change at all, then we don't listen. And I think that one thing that I have been most proud of as being part of this board is its responsiveness and with the administration. And You know, I know that these cuts, you know, I mean, people in buildings lost colleagues as a result of these cuts. And I think that, you know, the board often gets credited for making tough decisions, but, you know, some people lost friends at work as a result of the cuts. And I think it's important that we recognize it. If my math is correct from what Mr. Oberst said, we're going to go into next year a much more difficult year to navigate with around 100 or more fewer employees to do this work with. And so, you know, that's tough. The community spoke, and I am so proud that this board and the administration listened to the community and looked at ways. But, you know, we are just a part of the community, and we're fortunate to represent the community, but we're a part of the community. And I know that on Thursday, when we had our final discussion with the superintendent's team, it was tough. You know, I was upset with what things look like. And I felt frustrated with people I care deeply about. And the fact that at the end of the day, people got together to figure out a solution that harmed children and their families the least makes me very proud to be part of it. And, you know, I look at this screen and all of the faces I see, and Dr. Roby, I think that you should know this, all of the people that you see on the screen care deeply about the children and families of Grand Rapids Public Schools. And that's what you get to inherit is this love.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Baker. Dr. Flores.
Well, certainly everything has been said that that addresses all of the people and all of the issues affected. You know, what stands out in my mind is that we have an active community that wants to be heard about services to their children, and we have an active staff. And they wrote us the emails, they expressed themselves widely throughout the community. And I received phone calls, I received the emails, people lobbied for change. I think they were, you know, lobbying the administration. And I have to give kudos to the administration for listening and for being adaptive in their response to the needs that our district is facing. And many of these cuts are so real, they involve people. It is very difficult. And I just have to give you kudos to the administration, the cabinet, the leadership that looked deeply at budgets and said, hey, we can cut more. You know, in Spanish, we have this saying that says, que no hay mal que por bien no venga, which means that there isn't a bad thing that a good thing doesn't come out of. And it reminds me that crisis brings opportunity, and that we need to look at how we do business and perhaps sometimes make changes in how we administer and deliver services. And so I see all of this as really a step forward, meeting what we have is an insurmountable crisis on hand with COVID-19. I encourage everybody to continue social distancing, wearing those masks, and I guess pray for a better day here. So that's enough said. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Flores. Mrs. Davis.
Yes, I would just like to reiterate that the decisions we made tonight, voted on, have not been easy. And I'm just so thankful to be a part of a board where I genuinely appreciate all of your questions, all of your opinions, all of your wonderings, and all of your love for our community and for our kids. And I want to thank our cabinet for all of the work that you put into hearing what we had to say and ask, and what our community had to say, and for adjusting multiple times based on what you were hearing. And I also just want to say thank you to those people in the community that not only those that advocated for their kids, but those that advocated for kids who might not have a voice. So just thank you for advocating for all of our students. And we really appreciate all of the emails and the phone calls. And we really do take all of the things that you share with us to heart when we are trying to navigate these tough situations. So I'm just really proud to be a part of Grand Rapids and a part of Grand Rapids Public Schools. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Williams.
As well as so many as others have said, thank you, Dr. Gorman and your staff, Dr. Roby, for your efforts to try to make these cuts stay away from our classrooms as much as possible. That was very important. Thanks to the community for sharing input and taking the time to let us know your wishes and desires. I would continue everyone to stay involved and stay connected, as there is a lot of work yet to do, as we could see from the budget for next year. And that if we, stay focused on equity and focus on together, knowing that together we can pull through. And in these trying times such as COVID, we are all feeling some type of discomfort, but we find peace and value when we take the focus off of ourselves and put it on others. And so I am going to encourage us all to remember that while we're advocate for your child, but others as well. Advocate for your school, but others as well, because it's in the together that we're going to make the most progress. Again, when we take the focus off of ourselves and put it on others, we can progress and make change that is going to benefit all of our students and all of our families. So thank you all so much. And again, welcome, Dr. Roby.
Thank you. So much has already been said. I won't repeat it all, but I will say I am very, very proud of this board and of the administration. Yes, well, we listened to what the community had to say, but I will be the one to also say that these 9 individuals were fighting hard for this district. They weren't dragged along on this decision. They didn't have to be pushed on this decision, but they were at the table consistently for the past few weeks, really asking how we can make a difference. So we appreciate the other people who came to the table, but I wanted to be really clear. They didn't have an epiphany when an email came in their inbox or when a text came through on their phone. Every one of these individuals were doing the hard work already, and happy to see that they were in the same vein with the community. So I want that to be clear. And I also hope that the people from the community, the parents, the organizations will come to the table, not to point fingers as we're in a really hard position for the next several years, but to bring solutions, to bring resources. And as Mrs. Williams said, for all of our kids. I think it's very necessary and easy to advocate for the child that's in your home, of course, but what's best for all of our kids will lift all of our kids. And so when you have your students in our district for kindergarten or first grade, I hope I see you for 12th grade and 11th grade, bringing resources to our district, bringing your love and your support to our district to help all of our kids. So, the flood of emails that we got for preschool, I want to see you walking that graduation stage as well. We need that. It's very important. And it's not a secret that many of those families exit our district before that time. And it's not going to help us grow if that continues to be the story. So over these next few years, as we work really hard for our students and families, I hope to see you all there with as much voice and as much opinion as you had over these past few weeks. Congratulations again to Mr. Klomparens. Welcome, Dr. Roby. We're excited to have you. It has been a pleasure working with you over the past few weeks and to see the commitment that